Hi, welcome to Mood Food with Melissa. I'm Melissa and I'm so excited to be sharing one of my favorite recipes with you. Today we're going to be making my garlic roasted sheet pan veggies, which is a super easy and versatile recipe made with just a few simple ingredients. The first thing we're going to get started on is just getting our vegetables cut down to the right sizes. And you can see that we have broccoli already cut up here. Honestly, I like to make things easy on myself and just buy the pre-cut broccoli. I get the organic, it's not processed, it's great, and it makes life really easy. Of course, fresh is always best if you have the time and the access to get really great farm fresh vegetables and you'd like to cut them yourselves. It definitely is a better quality, but sometimes you've just got to get dinner on the table. So we're gonna go with the easy route here, and we're gonna use these pre-cut broccoli florets. And you'll see that they're more or less the same size, but then there's like always a couple like this in the bag that do not fit with the rest of the family. So we can just break those up with our hands. You can use a little knife if you'd like to, but as my grandmother would say, your hands are the best tools in the kitchen. So I like to just break them up like this. And so we'll get them down to approximately the same size. And honestly, you don't need them to be or want them to be exactly the same size. When you have a little bit of variation in the size of your food and, before you cook it, you're gonna get a variation in texture when it's finished cooking. So you'll get some pieces that are a little softer, some that are a little crisper, and I love that variation of texture. I think it just makes any dish a little more interesting, even if you're not adding too much to it. So we've got our broccoli all set here, and we're gonna set this off to the side so we can work on our peppers and onions. So we have about 4 cups of broccoli, and we're gonna add about 2 cups of sweet onion. And I really like to use Vidalia when they're in season and accessible. There's a really sweet, mellow onion, and it's important to use a sweet onion for this recipe, or I guess you could use whatever your personal preference is, but I really like to use a sweet onion for this recipe because I don't wanna cook it down too much. I want it to have a little bit of firmness to it and a little crunch still when it's done cooking. And if you use a nice mild onion to start with, you don't have to worry too much about cooking it down enough to make it palatable. So we're using a nice sweet Vidalia onion here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut the top off here, and then I'm going to cut across the stump in the bottom of it here, which is gonna give me these 2 nice pieces that are held intact by that stem at the bottom. And then to get these cut into slices, I'm just going to go really roughly here. They don't have to be exact. Again, a variation of texture is really nice. So you're looking for about a 1/4 inch thick strip, but you kind of, don't get too hung up on it. If the strips end up a little thicker or a little thinner, I honestly think that's great. So don't worry too much about your knife skills here. You're just gonna make sure that you're getting some more or less even sized strips. And the only thing is you don't want them too thick, because if they're too thick, you're gonna end up with more or less a raw onion in your dish. And we don't want it to be a mushy, fully cooked onion, but we don't want raw either. So somewhere between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch is gonna be the perfect place. And now we're gonna add about 2 cups of red bell pepper. And I'll show you a really easy way to cut these. So rather than cutting the top off and fighting the seeds out, I like to just do this. Go around the outside, and that core is gonna hold all those seeds right in place for you and make it really easy to remove them and end up with these beautiful pieces of pepper. Once we have our peppers cut down like that, I'm just gonna go through and cut them into little strips. And again, we're going for a 1/4 to 1/2 inch here. All right, so we've got about 2 cups of peppers on there now. And you can see everything's just kind of mixed together. I'm gonna give it a nice little toss with my hands to get everything nice and evenly distributed before we add our salt and oil. We're gonna add about 2 teaspoons of that beautiful Duxbury salt that I love. And I mean, it's always the case, the mineral profile in this salt, but when you're using the salt in a really simple recipe like just roasted vegetables, the salt goes a long way in the quality. All right, so we've got our salt in, and now we're gonna add about 2 tablespoons of roasted garlic oil. And this oil is from the roasted garlic confit that I showed you how to make in another one of my episodes. So after you've used up all of that delicious roasted garlic, save that oil. It is one of my favorite things on roasted vegetables. And I especially love it on broccoli because the garlicky oil gets all into the little florets of the broccoli and gives a really powerful flavor punch. So we're just gonna add about 2 tablespoons or so on there. And then we're gonna give this another little toss before we pop it in the oven. So I'm just popping a glove on here to do this because that's one of my favorite little tricks in the kitchen. As much as I love to work with my hands, I don't love to wash them 20,000 times when cooking. So having some gloves on hand is a really easy way to be able to work with your hands without having to wash them 800 times or having your hands get really dried out from getting washed so much. So we've got everything all set up here. It's looking great. What you're looking for is a nice coating of oil on everything. You want everything to have a nice little shine to it, but you don't want any pooling of oil on here. If you have too much oil, it's actually going to prevent the browning that we want. And if you don't have enough oil, it's just not going to really roast the way we want. So about 2 tablespoons, and then you can add as needed. So start light, add as needed. So this is what we want. We want it glistening. We don't have any pooling, but we've got a really nice coating of olive oil on everything here. So we're gonna pop this into the oven for about 15 minutes. I'm going to put it in at 425, and if you have a convection oven, definitely turn that feature on. That's gonna help you get a really nice char on these, and I think that broccoli especially just is beautiful with a little bit of a charred crust on it. So we're gonna pop this into the oven, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So our veggies are all set. They were in the oven for about 15 minutes, but that'll vary based on your oven and a variety of other factors. So just give them a little peek after about 10 minutes and make sure they're not getting too overcooked. What you're looking for is when you stick a fork in, you're gonna feel the fork goes in easily, but you've gotta push the fork in. If the fork is pressed into this and it just goes straight in, we've overcooked it. So you're looking for a nice little kind of, not necessarily a crunch, but a firmness to this. And same thing with your onions and your peppers. Everything should be softened, but it shouldn't be soft. And this can be kind of just served as is. It makes a great side dish, or you can make it a really easy sheet pan dinner by just adding some chopped up sausage or some chicken chunks. I really love to serve this as a side dish with my pan fried ribeye. And I really love to use it in my Thai almond noodle dish, which I'll be showing you how to make in another episode. It's a really versatile recipe that can be used on its own or in lots of things. It's just something great to have in your repertoire. We didn't do a lot here. It's basically just chopped up vegetables, but it's that beautiful sea salt and that beautiful garlic oil that is gonna give it enough flavor to elevate it beyond just a basic roasted vegetable without having to add a bunch of extra ingredients. So be sure to check out that other episode where I show you how to use this in my Thai almond noodle dish. And you can find this recipe and more at moodfoodwithmelissa.com. Thanks for cooking with me today. I can't wait to do it again.